test is so good just for like, even just the mental aspect of like, if your body's saying, like we always say, listen to your body, but now your body is actually telling you you're not actually listening to your body. So this test is a way for you to actually now listen to your body. So when you miss training days because your body's telling you that this is not a great day, now this test gives you something to be like, okay, well, this is okay. It's okay to miss this day because I've got this objective way to measure that my body says no.
2, 1.
Oh. You want me to intro? All right, Zach. So why don't we go through the flexibility test that you have me do and all your athletes do? And well, one, like, why do you do this test?
So this test, now, do I look at the fuzzy thing or do I look here? Here, right? Okay.
Well, hold on. Which one do you think you look at?
This is at my eye level, so and you guys always seem to be looking straight ahead.
No, you do one eye here and one eye there.
Yeah.
It's actually. All
right. So the idea is with strength and conditioning in a realm that's so subjective is applying or finding a tool that can make it subtly more objective. So the idea is that when we push ourselves, sometimes what's emotionally challenging is in fact only emotionally challenging and not physically challenging, but we can use what we're about to show you, which is a global stiffness test, and by global I just mean measuring stiffness from head to toe to determine readiness. I still wanted to look there. To determine readiness and also how stressed someone is on any given day, so we can make maybe micro adjustments to programming and not dig someone a big hole.
Well, sorry, what were you saying the other day or yesterday? We were talking about like this is like a quantitative way to measure stress because it's a way for us to see like if we can do maximum recoverable volume and then get results faster.
Yeah, so there's two parties. One is MED, minimal effective dose. So if you have a graph and there are two lines, you have minimal effective dose going slowly but surely on this one path, and this thing called maximal recoverable volume, which was invented more recently by Dr. Israetel, where you can cause more stress in the near term, but ultimately they level out. So the minimal effective dose someone needs to get better, and the maximal recoverable volume gets you the same place, one gets there quicker. The people in the minimal effective dose party are a little fearful of the maximal recoverable volume because they're worried about the wheels coming off and you doing too much. So while one graph goes slow and steady like this, or it might be like this from your angle, but slow and steady like this, maximal recoverable volume is going to shoot way up on this volume versus time curve, and then they even out. But by using this type of feedback, we can fill in that gray area between what the ego wants to do and what fear is holding you back on.
And because you're doing the maximal recoverable volume, you might have a higher chance of injury just because you're basically shortening the end point. You're trying to get there faster, so there could potentially be a high risk of injury, and with this, you're trying to eliminate that.
Exactly. It's like we can...
Or control it, I guess.
Control it a little bit better, because when a coach writes you a program, it's their best guess for any given day.
Sure.
Right? So the way we can do this is we can give someone a major theme for a microcycle or a macrocycle and steer it with what their body tells them. And the great thing about this test is rather than doing like a vertical jump where you need a vertec, or rather than having fancy bar speed technology, you can do this anywhere. So I was driving from Asheville to here. I got out in Cookeville, trained at Mayhem, got out of the car, I tested, it was super tight. And then after 30 minutes of cardio, I went back in the gym after being fully long, and then came here.
All right. Before we turn this into a podcast, let's do the test.
I got a lot of shit to talk about.
Who's going?
Mike, let's have you go, and you, I think, let's just put you over here.
You got some chalk on your hands?
I do.
Donuts.
Go get some donuts and eat them, and then you can come do this test.
So the idea is that Mike's knees are not locked. So if you see CTP from the side, CTP, perhaps, and a lot of people walk around like this, but if Mike hyperextends his knees, he's got big hamstrings, but if he pushes his knee back, you can't really see any space, it's flat. But we don't want to be doing that as we walk around, and during training we want it to be soft. So you just relax your knees. Natural. Yeah. Yep. A lot of people aren't natural as they walk around, but no excessive bend either. So he's going to tuck his chin and hang. He's not reaching, it's not a hamstring stress, but we're just seeing what stiffness looks like from head to toe. And with his donut fingers, he can see how far down he gets.
Can you breathe or do anything, or do you just go down once?
You can breathe, you just don't want to exhale once you're down there. So then I would say, Mike, what feels most restricted? Hamstrings. So we might spend some time stretching out the hamstrings and give a post-test to see if he's longer before we go into any exercise. So someone who's been doing this for a while, like Alex and myself, we know exactly how far down the box we've come at our longest position. The longest you are down, the more ready you are for exercise. And over time, you might even naturally hang further and further.
So you would recommend, like, this would be like my baseline, and I kind of compare to this every time I come in?
Your baseline would be that which is longest. So if you come in and you're here, and you know that your baseline is 3 inches farther than that, okay, I need to get a little bit further before I get into this. And if on any given day you can't, well, that might be a day for technique work, might be a day for stamina. Yeah. It might be a day to just maybe pack things up and head out and try again the next day. But we can prevent those days from digging a big hole because you didn't know what to do in your mind.
So if I'm doing this for the first time, I would want to make sure I am fresh when I do this, because if I come in for my first time ever doing this baseline and I'm already fatigued, maybe I trained really hard, or then it could kind of throw everything off. Or
it could throw everything off, but perhaps in the next training session, you'll be fully flexible again. So athletes will send me photos of their box or plates or even on their leg, and you see over time tension just shed because they just naturally hang lower and lower.
Do you have all your athletes send photos of their box?
I have this like keepsake of like shins and boxes that have chalk marks on them.
Cool. So an athlete would do this first thing when they come into the gym. Is that correct?
Very first thing. And just as a side note, this is not something I invented. There's a guy formerly out of Minnesota named Dave Delanabe, who's a pretty brilliant mind. And to my knowledge, he invented this, and this was passed along to me through my latest mentor, who is a chiropractor. So I'm not taking claim I didn't invent this, but I find that this works most of the time for most people.
He's talking about the test, not the box. He didn't invent the box.
Did not. No, Rogue invented the box.
So when McGee is testing, and let's say he walks in and he's tight, or he hasn't got to his baseline, so you would have him do basically some hamstring stretches. Is it always hamstrings, or can it be something else?
No, it could be anything. So I've had an athlete who recently strained her upper neck and rib area, and she had referred pain kind of all down the opposite side of her body. So I said, Emily, when you tuck your chin around and hang, what feels most tight? She says, well, I've got something here. I was like, okay, let's prioritize that. Check. No change. Right. So we know it's not coming from here. We're going to try other places. She tries the opposite side of the rib cage, and she gets to her baseline. So it's going to be different for each person, but we can just apply the principles of whatever you need to do to get longer.
Right.
McGee even mentioned like Wim Hof, or breathing, like saturating the body with more oxygen. That's worked as well.
Yeah.
Just getting the tissues a little bit better prepared with more O2 availability.
Yeah.
So.
Or even resetting the nervous system.
So here's a question. Microphone. So basically, they do the test, and then they have some time to go try to fix. If they don't get to their spot, they have time to fix it, and then after they try to fix it, if it's still not, then you know?
Yeah, so my athletes will tell me what window of time they have to train. If they tell me 45 minutes, I say, if after 5 minutes and trying different shit, you can't get there, let's go in this direction with your program today where it's a little lighter.
Okay.
It's a little easier.
So you don't go off that first test. You try to fix it a little bit, and then
fix it a little bit. And there are some days, like Alex was saying yesterday, he's like, he'll wake up feeling good physically, and he knows he's going to kill in the gym. Those are the days where you walk in, no warm-up, no nothing, tuck the chin around and hang, and you're there.
Yeah.
Those are the days he's PR too.
Yeah. Yeah. So those days, if I walk in and I am at baseline, or my longest, basically before I even do anything, those are the days I know to actually like push it harder. Like it's kind of almost a mental and a physical thing. Like I know that those are the days that I can go in and push myself like harder, and the days where I feel tighter, those are the days where I kind of back a little bit so that I don't push myself too hard and then risk getting injured again.
And the crazy thing about coaching, and like we all know this as coaches, when you deal with different exercises, there's a lot of shit in your way in terms of reading an athlete. So I tell you, you have your perception of what's challenging, you have the athlete's perception of what's challenging, and then you trying to perceive what that athlete thinks is hard. There's a lot of smoke there, right? It's hard to weed through. So when Alex came to me with his initial assessment and had been out of training for a couple of months, I simply had him pick up a bar off the ground, deadlifted a couple times at 95 pounds. It might not have felt super hard for Alex emotionally or mentally, but when he checked on his box, he had lost flexibility. This is not an inherently bad thing. It just means that it stressed him. That's our starting point, and he wants to wait until he's back before proceeding.
Yeah. So
Did you improve his fallout time at all?
I think I helped him probably get worse. I decreased your fallout skills because you weren't on the couch as much.
Yeah. So, but that's essentially what you're trying to do with the test is that you're trying to see, all right, what's the minimum effective dose in terms of like weight and load and intensity, so that one, you can stress to the maximal point and then grow from there. Because if you try to stress too quickly, well, then you're just digging this hole where your body's not ready for it yet. Yeah.
So when I initially started with this, having learned it from a few other people, is I split my team in half. Half used it and made the changes that we're talking about. I'm sorry, I'm like looking all over the place, but I'll look here. And half didn't. And then we found out that the half of my team who would not respond to it, they might do 2 sets of heavy back squats and then not recover at all. Those guys, the next day, were just beat to shit because they didn't listen. They just kept going, but they still tested to give me that feedback. Whereas the people who were in line with what was happening rep by rep and day by day were just constantly in line and progressing much faster than the other half of the group.
I'm gonna test mine. I feel like
let's test Alex's, and then you tell us what you would have him do according to how he tested.
Well, the cool thing is I take myself out of it. Like if I didn't have this tool, I Okay, yeah. So I think what's nice is that I can work with people across the world and allow them to understand their own bodies better without pretending to know what's going on with them. So Alex will check, and because he's done this for a while, he likely knows the tools he needs to get fully recovered fastest. So he knows that it's somewhere here, and if ever you're unsure, just check again. It's not going to affect the test. Now, Alex usually stands off plates.
Yeah, I usually stand off plates.
Alex here, but let's just say today, and Alex, you can reach.
All right, maybe I can just go over here so that way it's not confused with McGee's old stiff ass.
And again, it's just a hang. He's not reaching.
Oh, well.
Right there.
So chalking the fingers is part of it.
Well, it helps. I usually actually do it so I usually get set up on some plates, and I stand on the plates. And this way too, I kind of know, if I use these plates, I know like the height. Or say I got 245s, then I know like the height of the plates. So I touch bottom with that, off the 245s.
Now you measure the chalk.
So yeah. So if I get tight and I can maybe only go to here, well then I know I stiffened up. So if I do stiffen up during training, what I'll try to do is, and I'll test this in between sets. So if I'm doing like a back squat, let's say I'm doing like 3 sets of 5, and I do my first set of 5 back squats, I go over here and I'll check, and if I'm tight, then I'll do what I need to do to get back to my full range of motion. Because if I continue to train while being tight, well, that's basically you're basically not recovering from that stress. So that's what I want to. That's what I'll do in between. So for me, I know what tools I need to do, and we figured this out just by playing with it. Actually, it's interesting because some of the things that I was doing that I thought was helping was actually making it worse.
That's what I was telling you, T, that it can actually shorten. Yeah. So if and you shouldn't come in the gym and foam roll for 40 minutes. This defeats the purpose of foam rolling, but you can start selecting objectively, or at least more objectively, because it's not an exact science. We don't know exactly what causes change, but you can observe very clearly that there is change, what tools work for you and what do not. Yeah. So Alex was trying some techniques that his body was like, whoa, hold up, because he would get higher up, meaning he would lose or gain more stiffness. Yeah.
So for me, my hamstrings are the thing, so I usually just take a lacrosse ball or this peanut right here, especially near like the top of my glute. That's where I feel like the most tightness. So I'll just do some extensions to basically stretch out my hamstring.
Well, how did you measure today, and what would you do according to that?
What?
Just now. You just did it. What did it tell you?
Good or bad test? Was that a good score or a bad score?
What I just did? Well, I've never done it off the box before.
So we can have him check on
Yeah. So actually, I would check on my old one.
Well,
So
yeah, let's do that.
okay.
That's what I want to know.
Okay. Yeah, I want to know if you're
I
gonna.
ain't trying to learn how you doing the peanut.
Well, I mean, so I'm gonna do the test. Normally, this is about the height where I can touch the ground. I can just grace the ground with this. So I'm tuck my chin in and bend over. Oh, couldn't get there. Okay, so.
So that was your objective, to touch the ground?
Yeah, so I couldn't get there. So I can get there with 2 plates, but normally it's 2 plates and that. So I'm gonna do my stretches or my mobility exercises to loosen up my hamstrings, because that's what prevents me from. That's where I feel the most tight.
Mm-hmm. And throw a little nugget in there, say it might be different for other people.
Yeah, so it might be different for everybody. You have to figure out what tools and what exercises and what movements actually help you get looser. And really you do that by kind of trying things and then testing your range of motion after that.
And right now, what are you using?
I am using this peanut from Mobility Kits. This is awesome. I left my foam roller in the car, but these Mobility Kits are awesome. All right.
You can also say, Alex, how that's changed over time. That's hardly where you started. So when you first started, you were just past your knees. And this is hanging. When he says trying to touch the ground, he's not trying to reach for the ground.
See, now I got there.
Hold on, I didn't see it.
Oh, sorry. So now I'm going to test again after I did my hamstring tackle floss. I'm going to test again. Oh, sorry, I missed the box. All right. So I can touch the ground then. My hat falls off every single time. But yeah, so I couldn't touch the floor, but now I could. And if you notice, like, my knees bent, but what Zach was talking about earlier is that you want to be natural. So relax the knees when you do it. You don't want to, by pushing the knees back, you're creating a bunch of tension. So you want to see without any tension, just completely relaxed. So my knees bent, but as long as it's consistent, it's gonna be the same. So that means if I can get to my baseline, I'm ready to train now. So if I could never get to my baseline, which was me standing on this platform and touching the floor, I would not necessarily, if I spent 10, 20 minutes trying to get there and I never got there, that would be a day where maybe I didn't train or I just did some very, very light cardio type work. So Zach, you call it without tension? Yeah, so basically without tension, basically it's movements and weights that don't stress you. So it should be things, and that's also, you also have to kind of figure out what movements don't cause any tension. So this is where now this test is kind of used for exercise selection as well.
Mm-hmm. So when Alex started, he was, and having been injured and laying on the couch for a while, when he tucked his chin round and would hang over, barely getting past his knees.
Yeah, I could only get here.
And
this is bad.
Since then, he's had to stack more and more plates. So the flexibility increases more and more if he's able to get the back of the palm to the ground, or you can use the box. You just need to be able to measure your longest position and know what to do in response to that.
And I like this too, because it's cool because you can see your progress over time. A lot of people, they're like, well, I never get any more flexible or anything like that. There's no way to measure that, but this is a cool way to measure it. And it happened really quick for me. Really quick. Yeah. So I've been doing this style of testing ever since I started working with Zach, which was, what was that, back in February?
Late February.
Yeah, late February. So it's September now. So pretty much almost 6-7 months. Mm-hmm. And there have been very few days where I couldn't get to baseline. So it may be 2 or 3 out of that whole time frame, because Zach has been able to program and kind of customize my training so that I don't get super stressed and wreck myself the day before. So a lot of times, in my training, he'll have me go to what's called tension and recovery. So I'll find that maximum load that causes me stress, and then I'll stay there instead of moving up in weight. So a lot of times people are like, all right, well, let's do a deadlift. I'm doing 5x5, squats or whatever, or deadlifts or whatever, and I'm going to increase the weight each set, but your body may not be ready to handle that. You got to find that load that causes stress and then stay there. And if it causes stress, then that's where we build off from next time.
And conversely, so the idea with exercise is you put as much stress on your body as you can recover from. That's when we're looking to improve strength, that's really what we're talking about at the end of the day. So conversely to what Alex was saying, if you are feeling like you want to go in the gym and do 5x5 squats, and you were to theoretically check your stiffness, because it's not really flexibility in terms of how far you're reaching, but how much stiffness you have in your tissues and from head to toe, and you do 5x5, and theoretically you had never lost flexibility, then that probably wasn't as good a session as it could have been had you maybe added 5 more pounds and then elicited a stress. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I got a question. How much would this change?
Shirts off.
Bing! How much would this change getting close to a competition?
It's an awesome question. So there's principle. No, it's awesome. There's principle of overload, right? Where as long as an athlete's healthy and they're not in pain, I might allow them, or if it's a sport of weightlifting where I don't want them getting too in their head, is what I might want them to do is take it away in 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 1 week out. Don't even do it if you're feeling healthy. If we're still working through some things, I want you to let me know what's going on. But if I'm trying to create an overload, then I might not really care about that.
Something like the sport of CrossFit, you have days where you need to train fatigue because that's what the sport calls for. So like if you're someone who's doing multiple day competitions, day 2, you're not going to walk into the competition in day 2 and do the test and be like, I should probably back off today. You're going to...
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
So something you can measure is you have those days of overload and those 3-day events, Granite Games, Wadapalooza, whatever. Over time, even in your prep for that, you can measure how much better you're recovering on a long enough timeline. So maybe it took 1 day after Granite Games to recover your flexibility. After Wadapalooza, you were actually flexible the next day. So I totally agree with you, but you can also use it for how long it takes.
Harder than Wadapalooza.
And I think what this does too is that if you do these tests and you follow that principle of recovery from doing the maximal effective volume, but recovering from that, you can actually do more, and you won't more things won't stress you out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there are some training sessions where if we want for an athlete to push for strength, but their body's saying it's not yet ready for it, but we also, maybe in the sport of CrossFit, definitely want to have that engine, well, I might just take, if on that day that engine was asked to work a little bit harder, I might reel them back in, do lighter, easier work, which you might have heard Alex describe in his training in the past. And by the end of that session, he might then be back, and then we can go into strength. So it can help you determine which part of your workout you prioritize first.
Cool.
Let's train!
I got one more question.
Yeah.
The days, you said you only had 2 or 3 days. You said you only had 2 or 3 days, 4 or 5 days, whatever the fuck it was, that you realized you weren't at your full length on the test. Was there anything common that you noticed that maybe
Oh yeah. Yeah, so on those handful of days where I couldn't get to my baseline, no matter what I did, those days I definitely felt bad. I felt bad. I didn't feel ready to train. My energy level was low. I felt beat up all over the place. Those are just the days I just really, really felt bad. So, and then the test just confirms it.
Was there a common denominator? You don't drink, but the night before, stress, life stress, was there something you could point to?
Go ahead, yeah.
If I remember, those days were travel days for you.
Travel days, yeah. So I travel quite a bit, quite frequently. So Zach brought up, he's my coach, he knows better than I do. But the days where I would travel, I'd be flying or on the road, sitting in a car for a long period of time, sitting in a plane, those are the days where I usually didn't feel great. Yeah.
And, emotionally, those are the days that you had a day of travel, you feel like you might have lost a day of training. So you're like, fuck, I need to make it up the next day and go hard. But what if your body's not ready to go hard and you dig yourself a hole or potentially risk injury? Yeah. And I've seen that happen. Yeah. I've definitely seen that happen.
This test is so good just for even just the mental aspect of if your body's saying, like we always say, listen to your body, but now your body's actually telling you you're not actually listening to your body. So this test is a way for you to actually now listen to your body. So when you miss training days because your body's telling you that this is not a great day, now this test gives you something to be like, okay, well, this is okay. It's okay to miss this day because I've got this objective way to measure that my body says no, and then you can maybe accept that. So like I've missed training days, and I'm like, I'm okay with that. Yeah.
Or, you might take that day to do some light cardio or technique, and the first thing,
mobility.
And the first thing we're gonna do today is just technique work. Like Alex still wants to compete in weightlifting, and still wants to get better at CrossFit. So we're keeping up with this weightlifting technique. And if you're working technique, you don't want it to be that challenging. So if Alex wants, and what we'll do next in the first part of our training session, is do some technique in the clean, but maybe make sure we're not pushing too hard to where it's causing stress.
Yeah.
Cool. Now let's train.
So what I tell for my CrossFit athletes is, can you push over your head what you can pull under your chin? Can you shoulder press what you can high pull? With a dumbbell in each hand or with the barbell?
Hips?
Strict.
Okay.
Can you balance those two out?